Parry's Pickups. Well, hello one and all, and welcome to episode 45 of Parry's Pickups. Today we've got a Gamecube special, and that's not the only thing that's special about this episode. We're actually going to be including gameplay footage for the very first time. Quite excited about that. So I've been playing through all these games and tell a little bit about them, accompanied by some footage. So first off, I'm playing Vex. Vex is a platform game released for the Gamecube, PS2 and Xbox 360. It was developed by Acclaim in-house, and it's rather good actually. It's got a lovely design aesthetic. Really nice, and you'll be able to see by the footage here that the game looks very lovingly designed. The actual platform mechanics are good. The game plays pretty well. The camera can be a little bit annoying at times. You can't always see exactly where you're going, which of course is the problem with a lot of 3D platformers. But actually what's interesting about this game is it uses the tried and tested Mario 64 formula. You're getting a world. Within that world several collectible items, and yeah, there's a clue to each challenge you must do within the level, very much like the stars are in Mario 64. In fact, this game also shares in its first level even more in common with Mario 64. For example, a mission where you've got to get to the top of a mountain, same as in Mario 64, and then another mission where you've got to do the same, pretty much the same task, but then fight a sumo wrestler at the top of the mountain. In a similar way, you fight the is it the Thwomp in Mario 64? Who is it? No, it's not, is it? It's like it's the turtle. I can't remember who it is. It's the bomb. It's the King Bomb, isn't it, on Mario 64? That's right. So it's pretty similar to that actually, which is interesting. But it really does its own thing visually and thematically as well. This has got a kind of sinister storyline. And you're not collecting beautiful little shining stars, you're collecting these hearts. I forget what they're called. They've got a very I can't quite remember, but yeah, you're collecting these like twisted heart things, and it's pretty well done, to be honest. I actually had a hard time putting this game down. It's pretty solid. The combat's fun as well. You've got these claws, and you can do uppercuts and mid-air combos, and yeah, it's nice, the tension that they've taken with the combat in here too. So yeah, I like Vex. I'd say this is a really quite imaginative and well put together 3D platformer that takes inspiration from some of the best out there. So that's Vex, a recommendation for sure. Next up we have Tetris Worlds. So Tetris Worlds is the GameCube Tetris game, and if you really must own a version of Tetris on the GameCube, I think this is pretty much your only option. I picked this up because I'd been playing Puyo Puyo Tetris on the Switch. Good friend and fellow podcaster Matt Boyle had a demo of that, and I really enjoyed it. I thought, oh, I'd love to get a new Tetris game. So I got Tetris Worlds on the GameCube. And it's a Tetris game with a storyline. These little characters are little cubes, and they've got to move from their planet. It's under threat, and they've got to find another place to settle in the world. It's a very weird storyline, but it's kind of fun. Well, why not add a bit of a storyline to Tetris? It shows some imagination in revamping the formula. And what I find quite soothing, or quite soothing, is the voice of the little character who will tell you if you've got a line, if you've got a Tetris, if you've got two lines. It kind of whispers seductively into your ear, which is you'll hear it. I'll try and play it for you, but it's cool. I like the presentation of it, and it's Tetris at the end of the day, and it plays well. They didn't mess it up, which is, you know, which is hard to do, I think, when you got Tetris, mess up Tetris. Anyway, it's got 4-player, which is very nice. So this is a good one to get for the GameCube. I think the GameCube is just the best console for multiplayer games. Still, in my opinion, it's the one I always go to because I love those controllers. The games that are available for it, available to play in multiplayer, are some of the best around. and yeah, it's nice to see another game with that function. It's also got this logo here. Was designed by Roger Dean, most famous for the Yes album covers, if you're familiar with those. So it's nice to see a little bit of Roger Dean artwork in a video game. Of course, not the only time that's happened. Moving along, I think we'll talk about the other game which is related to Tetris, and the fact that I've been playing Puyo Puyo Tetris. I got Puyo Pop Fever for the Gamecube, which is a really solid, enjoyable version of Puyo Pop, or Puyo Puyo, or whatever you want to call it. Dr. Robotics Mean Bean Machine if you like. Yeah, it's great, you know, what can I say about it? You can see from this gameplay footage it's a very similar game to Tetris. And the idea is to line up 4 of the same colour blobs. Once you do that, you can create chain effects where the remaining blobs will fall. If they fall into a desirable position, you'll also form another line. You can form chains, and then that affects the your competing characters' screen. So you can really cause some grief for the person you're playing against. It's got 2-player split screen multiplayer, which is great to have there. You know, not 4-player unfortunately like Tetris, but 2-player is available in this game. It's bright, it's colourful, it's fun, it's a solid package, and well worth picking up for the Gamecube. SX Superstar is the first of 2 off-road SX games that I'll be looking at in this episode. This one's developed by Climax, who had made the fantastic Speed Kings, which I covered on PS2 some time ago now. And yeah, that was a very solid arcade style, Burnout-esque motorcycle game. This one, of course, is off-road SX game. I don't know how I feel about this game. It's got all the tropes of the genre, you know, it's got that extreme sports type soundtrack. Which is great, and I really think adds to the effect of the game, and it's very suitable. The handling of the bikes feels reasonably good, to be honest, I'd say. Track designs, okay, not the best. I found the second track I played on to be rather confusing because it didn't feel like the checkpoints were laid out very well. I don't know if that's the idea, that you're really meant to explore this open, free area and just find the checkpoints within it, but that wasn't so clear, and the gameplay ended up being a bit confusing. There's something reasonably slow about it, especially, well, maybe it's only because I'm playing with the slower CC bikes at the moment, but no, I never also got into the trick side. I actually just had a go on the race mode. So yeah, I'm not sold on this game, even though visually it's very nice and the handling's pretty good. I don't think it's as good as some of Climax's other games, namely Speed Kings, but it's a different type of motorcycle racing game. This one, I say there's another game available for Gamecube if you're after an SX game, which is probably a little bit more enjoyable. And that game would be Big Air Freestyle, which, you know, may look a little bit rough around the edges compared to SX Superstar, but its gameplay somehow feels more solid. I played through a race on this game, and it just seemed a lot more direct, a lot easier to control, but had a lot of challenge as well. There wasn't the same weight in the bikes as there are in SX Superstar, so I guess it didn't feel quite as realistic, but the actual racing was fun, and again it has that extreme sports type soundtrack, you know, that sort of punk, high energy music, which really fits here. I enjoyed the course design. It felt faster than even with the same CC bike than SX Superstar. I don't know, I just thought it was a more fun game and was just an all-round more solid experience. I would totally recommend this game. It's also got a demo of Godzilla Destroy All Monsters on it, so if you're curious about that one, you can try that one out, which is what I shall be doing because I've been considering trying picking up this game, so I'm going to give that the demo a go and see what I think. But big freestyle, one to get. We have a game I've just been playing and wow, it's a lot of fun. At least part of it is, and that game is Hulk. Hulk is based, well, it's actually a continuation of the Ang Lee film from way back when, 2003. The game is from, I think came out around the same time as the film. It's got a really nice style to it. It reminds me of the game 13 in a lot of ways. It's sort of cel shaded, but all the characters are very stylized, and I thought that was a really cool direction to go in. The controls are very well done, everything feels very smooth. The whole thing looks quality, it looks like a high-end, big-budget video game. But yes, as I say, stylized, so some of the environments aren't maybe as detailed as you expect, because it's got this quality to it. Maybe comparable to something like the games based on the animated Batman series. But the gameplay, it either sees you playing as the Hulk, where you're smashing and crashing and throwing, and it's incredibly fun, incredibly smooth and very satisfying as you take on waves and waves of enemies. If you think you have to destroy all the enemies in an area, you might not necessarily have to, because they keep coming in waves and waves and waves. So the thing is though, it's so much fun smashing people up that you probably just want to keep disposing of the enemies by either picking them up and throwing them, picking them up and then punching them, or throwing them against a wall, or just smashing them and then using your sort of like projectile attack to stun them. The combat's got a lot of depth, a little bit of I say a lot of depth, it's got enough depth, you know, there's a cool combo system going on here in this game, and yeah, it's just, overall it's just very satisfying to beat people up. The other part of the game is a stealth game where you play as Bruce Banner and you're kind of sneaking around and you're just hacking computers, and yeah, it's a way to add some variety to the gameplay, because I think if it just was the Hulk sections, you might grow a little bit tired over them over time. But yeah, I'd say if this game was just a stealth game, it wouldn't be that great. Even though at times, you know, the enemies look a little bit like that first level's Metal Gear Solid, but the gameplay doesn't really have any depth compared to Metal Gear. It feels a little bit like my first stealth game in a lot of ways. But also, it also feels a bit awkward at times. There was a part where I had to uncover a vent to sneak through into the area, but it wasn't told to me that I had to defeat an enemy before I would be allowed to go through the vent. So that was a bit frustrating. So that part of the game I'm not quite sold on yet. There's also this hacking of computer terminals, which, you know, it's a neat little number and letter arrangement game, which is relatively simple, but given the time limit it can be reasonably challenging. But I see that could probably get tiresome if it's overused throughout the game. But this game kept me playing. That was the thing, you know, it's not so terribly difficult that you want to quit. It's just a lot of fun to play at the moment anyway. So yeah, I think this is a great fun game, and if you want a Hulk game for the Gamecube, like, this is the reason I picked this one up. As you may have seen if you saw the bonus Parry's Pickups episode, I explained to Mike my reasoning for wanting this one, and he's not wrong. This is a fun game, so worth checking out. Next up we have another little bit of a fighter, I suppose. It's Shrek Super Slam, which, you know, I'm not a massive fan of Shrek, but I do happen to like Power Stone, And this game sort of is a little bit like Power Stone, which surprised me somewhat. For a licensed game, you don't expect it to copy a game with as much pedigree as... Well, actually, maybe you do. It's just Power Stone's always been a bit of a niche game, I suppose. But it's great that they've taken that similar arena-based combat formula and done another game with that mechanic, because not enough have that mechanic, I don't think. It plays rather well. You can wander around, pick up objects, throw them. It feels solid. You know, it's got a fun little storyline where you're telling fairy tales to the little dragons, babies that Shrek is looking after, and it starts off with a cutscene where Puss in Boots has a standoff with Gingerbread Man, and the dialogue is actually quite funny and the cutscenes are very well done. I wonder if perhaps some people involved with writing Shrek also had a hand in writing this game, because it certainly feels like a top quality product. And the gameplay within with the Power Stone like arena based fighting is actually really fun from what I played of it, and does seem to have a reasonable amount of depth. So for a good fun game, which is a 1 to 4 player as well, which is wonderful, I think if you like Power Stone or just fun party competitive fighting games, maybe even if you like Smash Brothers, you might actually find something to enjoy in Shrek Super Slam, surprisingly enough. And moving on now to Need for Speed Underground 2, which surprised me a little. I wasn't sure what to expect with this game, whether it would just be a straightforward series of races, but it's actually an open world racing game where a format I think that was really popularised by Burnout Paradise, but this did it first, or it copied someone else. I'm not exactly sure. I can't recall if the original Need for Speed Underground had this open world or not. Let me know. I haven't played that game in a very long time, but this sort of succeeds in that. I've been playing a lot of Need for Speed Undercover, and I'd say that's a much better game. I'm playing the Wii version, and well, the environments are very sparse and nothing looks particularly nice in the Wii version. The way the cars handle is really good. So going back a bit to Underground now, and the visuals here are nice. You know, I really like the neon environments that you drive through here. It's got a licensed soundtrack, which, you know, is good or bad depending on your taste in music, but you can change the tracks around a bit, which is fun. The handling doesn't feel, as I say, as refined as some of the later Need for Speed games, but it's okay. You know, it does a job reasonably well. Something seems to be a bit off with the AI, I found. You know, there's a lot of cars crashing into each other, and it just feels a bit messy. I don't know why that is. Maybe just racing games have got a little bit better over the years, but I like the presentation, I like the visuals. The driving could be a little better, but it's certainly serviceable. It's solid. So not bad if you want a street racing game for the Gamecube. Underground 2 is a pretty enjoyable title, I'd say, from the time I've spent with it anyway. And next up we have Mario Smash Football, a game I used to own way back when, but I think I traded in or sold it online, I forget now. And I'm trying for the life of me to remember why I did that. Because I think it's a very solid and enjoyable game. It takes that Mario format of power-ups, accessible, fun, colourful gameplay, and applies that to football. So during the small, I think 4-side matches, is it? It's got to be more than that. It might be, actually. You can unleash power-ups throughout, like red shells or spiked shells or large green shells. You know, you gain these power-ups throughout the match, and they sort of Mario-ize this version of football. Also, it's incredibly accessible. There's no like the ball can't go off the field at all. There's no throw-ins or anything like that. There's an electric fence around the edge bouncing the ball back onto the playing field. it's got some really nice over-the-top presentation, slightly more attitude than your usual Nintendo fare actually. They handed this game out to Next Level Games rather than develop it in-house at Nintendo, and it was an interesting move to make because it definitely gives this game a different flavour to most Mario games. It's like a powered up version of Mario. I really like it actually, and one thing I can't manage to do though is beat the computer players. I've played a few single matches already and I've been struggling a little bit with it. There's a definite challenge there against the opponent AI in the game, and yeah, I imagine this is going to be a great up to 4-player multiplayer game. Another great reason to invest in some more controllers for your Gamecube if you don't already have a few. Because again, another fantastic multiplayer game for the console. It's well worth checking out. And well, keeping on the theme of sports titles, I picked up NFL Street. Now, I'm not a huge American football fan by any means, but I've been long wanting to find an accessible NFL game. And I thought the Street series would be my way in. I played NFL Street 3 on the PS2 reasonably recently, perhaps maybe in the last pickups video, I think. The last episode 44 that would be, and I wasn't quite sold on it. It didn't quite do the job for me. This one maybe goes a little way to rectifying that. I really love the colourful presentation, the personality of the players, and it kind of throws you into the game. I kind of thought, oh, I'd love a tutorial mode, but having already played the tutorial mode of NFL 3, then yeah, I already had an idea how this game would play. It seems like it could be the most accessible NFL Street game I have played. Maybe that's only because the last game was actually quite complex. Of course, the game of American football is reasonably complex, but playing through the tutorial mode left me a little bit confused. Whereas this doesn't have it, and you kind of just thrown right in there. The actual objective of playing the game is very straightforward. Get the ball on the line, touchdown. I was able to do that a couple of times here. You know, as soon as you work out what the run button is and the pass button, then it's yeah, it is simpler and more playable. There is a formation selection again, like in the last NFL game, which of course, you know, that's important strategy. I've still not got my head around that, but yeah, maybe I'll play a bit more of it. Maybe find a friend who has a better knowledge of the game to play it with. That would probably be the best way for me to enjoy this. But I really love the style of this series, and I think this game maybe even has an edge over the third game for me. I think it felt very fresh here, whereas by the third installment something was lacking, perhaps. I don't know. I really think this is okay. It's 1 to 4 player again, which is good. You can find enough people who understand American football to play it. But yeah, very cheap, inexpensive game, and if you're curious, if you want an accessible NFL game, this might just be the one. Moving on now to another sports game, I guess. Motorsports this time. It's F1 2002, which is a great looking game on the Gamecube. When you think about the time this was released, it must have been among one of the best looking titles on the format, I'd have to say. It does its job rather well. A little disappointing at first to find the accelerate and brake weren't on the analog shoulder buttons on this game. Instead they were on the A and B buttons. But when you got such a lovely big A button on the Gamecube pad, it feels quite natural for that to be the acceleration. Sorry. I think this is fine. I mean, it kind of does everything you'd want it to do. It's got graphics, the car's handled well, a little bit twitchy. It depends what viewpoint you use, I found. I like the default viewpoint in the car, just slightly elevated above the car so you can see the front of it and see the width. Whereas where you're sitting just behind the wheel, you're looking straight out, I find that rather difficult. It's hard to see what's on the horizon in this game, and just having that slightly elevated angle helps. But I found when I switched to the behind the camera car that the car just felt so twitchy and unnatural that it was more difficult to drive than anything. I didn't quite appreciate that view. It's got all the presentation from the 2002 season of F1 and all those drivers which at least I'm familiar with from back in the day. Eddie Irvine and Mika Hakkinen and Rubens Barrichello, and, you know, the list goes on. Of course Schumacher, Michael and Ralph Schumacher, Jenson Button's also in this game. Yeah, I'd say if you wanted an F1 game for the GameCube, then why not? I think you could do far worse than pick this up, because this is really good. There's also F1 Career Challenge, which is very similar, so I think you'd be okay either one you pick up. I've not played Career Challenge yet, but I do have a copy on Xbox I need to try out soon. So F1 2002 definitely comes recommended. And finally, a game which I've been curious about for the longest time. It's a game that's published by Nintendo, developed by Kuju, and that game is Battalion Wars. Battalion Wars is a third-person action game where you can command a squad of soldiers. The tutorial mission, which is all I've played sadly at this point, introduces the mechanics to you in a really fun and accessible way. The controls are as simple as you'd hope them to be in a game like this. You've got a lock on, you've got a jump, you've got a fire, you've got a roll mechanic, first person look around perspective, and it sees you just traversing the landscape, taking down these little listening turrets which are being placed by an enemy spy. You continue through the tutorial mission, which eventually meet up with some of your squad members who you can then command to follow you, or stay, hold their ground and attack, and then you can select the targets which you want them to shoot. There's also vehicles that you can commandeer in this game too. The tank is quite... Actually, it wasn't the tank I got to play. I just played in a little like buggy similar to the Warthog in Halo actually. And yeah, that was fun. Everything's rounded and cartoony, and the animation is exaggerated and fun. Fairly nice CG intro as well in this game, which I rather appreciated. It's deserving, I think, of the awards it got at the time, because this is a nice looking, well thought out, enjoyable, accessible war game, I suppose, but it's cartoony and fun, and I think that's the biggest strength of Battalion Wars here, with that, and it's incredibly accessible and a good looking game as well. And that is it for the GameCube special. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. Please let me know in the comments, or like the video if you did enjoy it. I hope you've enjoyed the inclusion of the gameplay footage in this video. I think it goes a long way to kind of getting across what I can't quite convey in words about these games. So thanks again for checking out Parry's Pickups. There'll be a new one on its way very soon. So until then, game on.